You're sitting still right now, completely still. Maybe your legs are folded. Maybe your back is against something soft, and nothing is trying to kill you. But somewhere underneath that calm, your brain is still running a program. An ancient program. One that was written hundreds of thousands of years before this room existed. Before that lamp. Before walls. And that program? It was designed for a world where sitting still exactly like you're sitting right now got your entire species trapped. This is the story of how ancient humans actually survived when predators didn't just hunt individuals, when they hunted groups, when they cornered species, and when the wrong move for an entire population meant no one made it to morning. Here's what most people get wrong about prehistoric predation. We imagine it like a chase. One animal, one human, one moment of terrible speed. But that's not what trapped species. What trapped species was geography and pattern, and the fact that predators, the big ones, the real ones, were not dumb. Saber-toothed cats, cave hyenas, short-faced bears, deer wolves. These weren't ambush animals that got lucky once in a while. These were apex intelligence systems running on millions of years of evolutionary refinement. They understood terrain. They understood timing. They understood, and this is the part that should unsettle you, that humans move in groups. And groups have edges. Paleoanthropological evidence from sites across sub-Saharan Africa, southern Europe, and the Levant tells us something uncomfortable. Early Homo sapiens and their predecessors were not at the top of the food chain. Not even close. For most of human prehistory, we were mid-tier. Prey as often as predator. Scavengers operating in the margins left by bigger, faster, more dangerous things. And the specific pressure that shaped nearly every survival behavior we still carry today, the pressure that rewired the human brain at a structural level, wasn't being chased. It was being cornered. Repeatedly. Seasonally. Sometimes for weeks. This is how ancient humans actually survived it. To understand what trapped entire groups of early humans, you need to understand something about Pleistocene geography that no modern map will show you. The landscape was not open. It was not the wide, flat savanna you picture from nature documentaries. It was a fractured, unpredictable patchwork of dense riverine forest, narrow valley corridors, massive cliff systems, and sudden dead ends formed by water. And predators knew this. Hyena clans and the fossil record is extremely clear on this coordinated. They posted scouts at high ground. They moved in relay patterns across valley mouths. Modern research into spotted hyena behavior, which we use as the closest behavioral analog to Pleistocene clan species, shows us that these animals didn't just chase. They contained. They would identify a group bison, antelope, or early human foragers that had moved into a valley system. And then they would simply wait at both ends. Which, okay, just take a second to appreciate how absolutely terrifying that would have been. You're not being chased. You're not even being approached. You just look up one morning and realize you haven't heard anything from beyond the tree line in 2 days. And then you realize why. This is what paleoanthropologists call a containment event. And the fossil evidence is disturbing in its specificity. At sites like Swartkrans in South Africa and Atapuerca in Spain, we find early human remains, Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis, commingled with massive predator kill assemblages. Not as hunters, as prey. Bones bearing the puncture marks of large carnivores. Remain scattered and processed the way carnivores process repeated kills at a feeding site. These weren't one-time attacks. These were seasonal containment zones, places where predators had learned across generations, passed down in behavioral inheritance that human groups returned to the same water sources, the same shelter sites, the same valley systems, and that those places had only so many exits. The trap wasn't built in a day. The trap was built over thousands of years of predator intelligence, mapping human habit. So what did the brain do? The first adaptation wasn't physical. It wasn't a better tool or a longer spear. It was a rewiring of the threat detection system at the neurological level. And you are running that rewired system right now. Tonight. Every night. It's called hypervigilance, and your brain never actually turned it off. The amygdala, your brain's threat processing center, operates on a principle called asymmetric risk weighting, which means it is not designed to be accurate. It is designed to be wrong in the safe direction. If a shadow moves in the dark and it turns out to be wind through grass, false alarm. You waste a small amount of cortisol. Your heart rate spikes briefly. You're fine. If a shadow moves in the dark and it turns out to be a cave hyena and you didn't react, you were gone. Your genetic line is gone. Every person you would have become the ancestor of, gone. This is why, by the way, you cannot fully relax in a dark room with the door open. Not really. You can tell yourself you're safe. You can know intellectually that nothing is there. But that low hum of alertness, that faint awareness that the darkness behind you is unmonitored, that's not irrational. That's the night protocol, still running. It kept your ancestors alive for 2 million years. It just hasn't been updated for apartments. Ancient humans developed what researchers call a sentinel sleep rotation. Groups didn't all sleep at the same time. Not fully. Not in containment conditions. Someone was always partially awake at a threshold between sleep and waking, monitoring audio input, monitoring smell, monitoring the specific pattern of predator approach sounds. And the brain got extraordinarily good at categorizing sound at night. Studies of present-day traditional hunter-gatherer communities, the Hadza of Tanzania, the San of the Kalahari show that group members spontaneously desynchronize sleep patterns in perceived threat environments. No coordination required. The brain triggers it autonomously. Because this is ancient software, it runs without permission. Here's the part of this story that almost never gets told. The predator containment problem, being trapped, unable to move, forced in a static defensive positioning for days or weeks, didn't just build a more alert brain. It built the specific social architecture that makes humans human. Think about what containment actually demands. You can't move, so you can't forage widely. Resources have to be managed, which means decisions have to be made about who eats first, who stands watch, who is excused for watch duty because they are injured or nursing, which means social hierarchy has to function under pressure. Information has to be shared accurately and fast. Trust has to be real because a sentinel who falls asleep is a sentinel who kills the group. Imagine you're in your 5th day of containment. You haven't been able to leave the rock shelter. You can hear, or you think you can hear, movement at the valley entrance each night. Your food is running low. One member of your group is sick. One is a child who cries intermittently. And you have to decide, as a group, whether tonight is the night you attempt a breakout without knowing exactly what's out there, how many, or which direction they're waiting. Now multiply that scenario by every winter, every dry season, every year, for 100,000 years. This is the evolutionary pressure that's selected for language. Not complex language, not immediately, but precise, rapid, low-volume threat communication. The ability to tell someone in the dark with minimal sound. The smell is coming from the north entrance. 2, maybe 3. Researchers studying the emergence of proto-language in early Homo sapiens and Homo heidelbergensis now largely agree. The sophistication required for coordinated nocturnal threat response, not hunting. Threat response was likely one of the core selection pressures that drove the rapid expansion of Broca's area in the human brain. The region responsible for speech production. Your voice, your words. Your ability to do exactly what you're doing by understanding this sentence that may have been forged specifically in the dark under predator pressure with no way out. Eventually, the group had to move. You cannot stay forever. Water runs out. Food runs out. And in Pleistocene Africa or Ice Age Europe, waiting for a predator containment to dissolve on its own was not a reliable strategy. Predators were patient. They had evolved patience as a primary hunting mechanism. They could wait longer than your stored food could last. So the breakout had to be deliberate, coordinated, and based on the archaeological evidence, it had to be theatrical. Fire. This is where fire transitions from being a comfort technology to a tactical weapon. Evidence from Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa dated to approximately 1 million years ago shows controlled fire use. But the more interesting story is in the Kebra Cave assemblages in Israel approximately 60,000 years ago, where fire use patterns suggest deliberate directional burning. Not campfire use. Perimeter use. We now use fire in festivals. We use it for ambience. We use it because it makes a backyard feel cozy in September. But the reason your brain finds a fire viscerally, immediately calming, even in a context where there is zero actual threat, is because for hundreds of thousands of years, fire was the direct sensory signal that the perimeter was defended. Fire meant the thing outside cannot see us as well as we can see it. Fire meant we're slightly less likely to die tonight. Your nervous system hasn't forgotten. It just moved you to the suburbs. The breakout formation itself was biomechanically sophisticated. Primatological research into chimpanzee responses to predator pressure gives us a useful baseline. Chimps form outward-facing defensive clusters with the largest, most aggressive males on the perimeter. But humans added something chimps don't use: coordinated noise as a disorientation tool. Shouting, clapping, stone striking not as panic response, but as deliberate sensory interference. Large Pleistocene predators relied heavily on auditory targeting at close range, particularly in low light. Synchronized noise from multiple human voices in different directions created acoustic confusion that disrupted the attack lock mechanism in predators like lions and hyenas. Humans were weaponizing group behavior against solo attack computation. It worked, but not always. Not every containment event ended with a breakout. Not every group made it to morning. And the fossil record doesn't let us look away from that. The Atapuerca site in northern Spain is one of the most complete records of early human mass mortality we have. In the Cima de los Huesos, the pit of bones, the remains of at least 28 individuals of Homo heidelbergensis were found at the base of a shaft, approximately 400,000 years old. Evidence of large carnivore activity is present throughout the assemblage. 28 individuals. That is not a family. That is a social group. A complete functional unit of prehistoric humanity gone. Processed. Deposited at the bottom of a natural trap they could not exit. I want you to sit with that for a second, because the numbers are easy to abstract. 28 people. 400,000 years ago. It sounds distant. Archaeological. But those 28 people were functionally, socially, emotionally operating at roughly your level of complexity. They had relationships, roles, people they trusted, people they were responsible for, and something cornered all of them in the same place at the same time. And none of them got out. This was not an isolated incident. Population genetic analysis of ancient human DNA, the field of paleogenomics, has repeatedly revealed something chilling about our demographic history. At multiple points in the last 300,000 years, the human population appears to have crashed to extraordinarily small numbers. One study, published in Science in 2023, suggested a bottleneck event approximately 900,000 years ago, where the ancestral human population may have dropped to fewer than 1,300 breeding individuals. Globally, 1,300. Globally, predation pressure wasn't the only cause. Climate, disease, resource collapse, all of these drove population reduction. But predation, specifically the containment dynamic, the seasonal, geographic, systematic trapping of groups, was a consistent culprit. And there were almost certainly entire regional populations, entire lineages that didn't survive their containment events. We're not descended from everyone who lived then. We're descended from the ones who got out. Every behavioral adaptation that carried those survivors through the hypervigilance, the sleep rotation, the fire perimeter, the group noise protocol, the social pressure-tested trust became heritable. Selected for. Amplified across 10,000 generations until it wasn't behavior anymore. It was architecture. It is your architecture. The anxious hum you feel in unfamiliar dark spaces. The way you instinctively track the exit when you enter a room. The fact that you cannot fully relax with your back unguarded. The ease, the specific, deep, unreasonable ease that comes from sitting near a fire with people you trust. None of that is modern. None of that is you being irrational. That is a containment event survivor's nervous system running exactly as designed in a world that no longer requires it but kept it anyway. The predators are gone. The valley walls are gone. The hyena clan waiting at the tree line gone. But the program that survived all of that, that's you. That's been you this whole time. The brain decided a long time ago that staying alert in the dark was a reasonable trade. That the cost of a few sleepless nights was worth it against the alternative of being the group that didn't notice the valley had no exit. And here you are. Proof that the calculation was correct. Your whole existence is the evidence. And honestly, maybe it's for the best.